Gentlemen, let me say this directly. If you are over 60 and waking up 3, 4, even 5 times a night just to urinate, your prostate is already controlling your life. It steals your sleep. It drains your energy. And slowly, it erodes your confidence as a man. Many of my patients tell me the same thing. I don't sleep more than 2 hours at a time. My stream is weak. I'm afraid to travel. I plan my day around bathrooms. What makes this even more painful is that most men believe this suffering is normal aging. They're told, this is just part of getting older, or worse, take this pill for the rest of your life, or prepare for surgery. But here is the paradox that stops men in their tracks. What if prostate enlargement isn't a disease you're doomed to accept, but an inflammatory process your body is begging you to calm down? And what if one simple dietary choice, something as small as a single nut, could begin shifting that inflammation within 24 hours? Not a drug. Not an operation. A natural, evidence-backed food that directly targets the biological processes behind prostate swelling. My name is Dr. Mohit Kara. I'm a urologist and men's health specialist with over 30 years of clinical experience. And today, I want to show you exactly how this works. And why so many men wish someone had told them sooner. Before we go any further, I want to make sure you're getting guidance you can actually trust and come back to. If this conversation about your prostate health matters to you, take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future videos made specifically for men over 60. And as we get started, type 1 in the comments if this topic speaks to you, or 0 if it doesn't, so I know how to serve you better. 1. Pistachios. Here's something that quietly shocks many men when they hear it for the first time. Your prostate doesn't respond first to medication. It responds first to blood flow. Long before pills, before procedures, before surgery is ever mentioned, the prostate begins to suffer when circulation in the pelvic region slowly declines. And that decline often happens silently for years. You don't feel it in your chest. You don't feel it in your legs. You feel it at night, standing in the dark, exhausted, waiting for your bladder to empty. And it never quite does. This is where pistachios enter the conversation in a way most men have never considered. Pistachios are not just a snack. Inside your body, they act like a signaling food. They are rich in antioxidants and uniquely high in an amino acid called arginine. Arginine is essential because your body converts it into nitric oxide, a molecule that tells blood vessels to relax and widen. When that signal improves, circulation improves. And when circulation improves in the pelvic area, the prostate finally begins to receive what it has been missing: oxygen, nutrients, and the ability to calm inflammation. For men over 60, this matters more than you've been told. Reduced blood flow doesn't just affect erections. It affects how efficiently your bladder empties, how inflamed your prostate remains, and how much pressure that swollen gland puts on your urinary channel. When circulation is restricted, inflammation lingers. When inflammation lingers, symptoms worsen. I've had men look me straight in the eye and say, "I thought my prostate was the problem." And my answer is often the same. The prostate is reacting to what it's not getting. When pistachios are eaten consistently, not excessively, just a small handful a day, they support healthier vascular signaling in the pelvic region. Over time, many men notice subtle but meaningful changes: a steadier urinary stream, less urgency, fewer interruptions at night, not overnight miracles, but by clear direction toward improvement. There is something deeply emotional about this for my patients, because better blood flow doesn't just reduce symptoms, it restores a sense of dignity. Men tell me they're no longer anxious about long car rides. They don't scan rooms for bathrooms. They sleep longer, deeper, and wake up less frustrated with their own bodies. Pistachios also help in another quiet way. They support weight balance and metabolic health, which matters because excess abdominal weight increases pressure on the bladder and worsens prostate symptoms. This is not about perfection. It's about reducing the daily burden your body carries. And here's what I want you to remember. Pistachios don't force your prostate to do anything. They support the body's ability to regulate itself, gently, consistently, and naturally. But as important as circulation is, blood flow alone is not the whole story. There is another internal process that silently drives prostate enlargement, one that has nothing to do with vessels and everything to do with cellular stress and damage. And that brings us directly to the next nut you need to understand. 2. Almonds. Here is a hard truth that unsettles many men when they first hear it. Your prostate doesn't age simply because you age. It ages because its cells are slowly being damaged every single day, and most of that damage is invisible. You don't feel it happening. You only feel the consequences years later, when urination changes, sleep is broken, and frustration quietly replaces confidence. This damage comes from something called oxidative stress. Think of it as internal rust. Over time, unstable molecules called free radicals attack prostate cells, weakening their structure and triggering chronic inflammation. And once that cycle begins, the prostate doesn't just enlarge, it becomes more irritable, more reactive, and harder to calm. This is where almonds play a role that almost no one explains clearly enough. Almonds are one of the richest natural sources of vitamin E, but not in the way most people think. Vitamin E in whole almonds works at the cellular level, helping neutralize free radicals before they injure prostate tissue. This isn't about boosting energy or metabolism. It's about protecting the prostate cells you still have, so they don't continue to break down under silent stress. For men over 60, this protection becomes critical. As we age, our natural antioxidant defenses weaken. The body becomes less efficient at repairing damage. That's why inflammation tends to linger longer, and why prostate tissue becomes more sensitive to pressure and hormone fluctuations. Almonds help slow that process, quietly, steadily, without forcing anything. But the story doesn't end there. What makes almonds especially powerful is their influence on the gut. Many men are surprised to learn this, but a significant portion of prostate inflammation begins far from the prostate itself. It begins in the digestive system. When the gut microbiome becomes unbalanced, inflammatory signals spread systemically. The prostate simply responds downstream. Almonds act as a prebiotic food. Their fiber and plant compounds nourish beneficial gut bacteria, which in turn help regulate inflammation throughout the body. When inflammation eases systemically, the prostate often becomes less reactive. Urgency softens, pressure eases, and the constant feeling that your bladder is never quite empty begins to diminish. I've had patients tell me something that always stays with me. They say, "It feels like my body finally stopped fighting itself." That's the experience we aim for. Not suppression, but balance. Almonds don't fix everything overnight. They offer something far more realistic for men in their later years: stabilization, preservation, the slowing of a process that too many men believe is unstoppable. A single ounce a day, raw or lightly roasted, is enough. Not because almonds are magic, but because protection accumulated daily adds up to resilience over time. Yet even with better cellular protection, one question remains unanswered. What about hormone signaling and the compounds that directly influence prostate size and urinary flow? There is another nut that addresses this from an entirely different angle. And that's where we're going next. 3. Pecans. There is a moment many men experience, usually quietly, usually alone, when they realize something deeper than urinary symptoms has changed. It's not just the bathroom trips. It's the unsettling sense that their body is no longer responding the way it once did. Hormones feel off. Energy is lower. Recovery takes longer. And the prostate seems stuck in a state of constant irritation. What most men are never told is this: prostate enlargement is closely tied to hormonal signaling, not just age. As men grow older, subtle imbalances begin to form between testosterone, estrogen, and the enzymes that regulate them. When those signals drift out of alignment, the prostate doesn't simply grow. It reacts. This is where pecans bring something unique to the table. Pecans are one of the richest natural sources of plant sterols, including beta-sitosterol. These compounds are remarkable because they interact with hormone-regulating pathways involved in prostate growth. They don't shut hormones down, they help modulate how those signals are received. And for the aging male body, that distinction makes all the difference. For men over 60, plant sterols have been repeatedly associated with improved urinary flow and reduced discomfort related to prostate enlargement, not forcefully, not aggressively, but by helping the prostate behave more like it did when hormonal signaling was steadier. There's also a deeper, often overlooked benefit here, one that affects far more than urination. Pecans are extraordinarily rich in healthy unsaturated fats, which support cardiovascular health. And when the heart and blood vessels function better, prostate tissue benefits by default. Improved circulation means fewer inflammatory signals reaching the gland. It means less congestion and less internal pressure that exacerbates urinary symptoms. I often tell my patients something simple but important. The prostate mirrors the health of the vessels that feed it. When vascular health declines, prostate resistance rises. Pecans help soften that pathway. Emotionally, this is where many men feel a shift. Better hormone signaling and steadier blood flow don't just reduce symptoms, they restore a sense of internal equilibrium. Men describe feeling more centered in their bodies, less reactive, less fragile, more stable. Pecans also provide zinc and magnesium, two minerals essential for testosterone regulation, muscle preservation, and nerve signaling, all of which influence how smoothly the urinary system functions. Again, this isn't about dramatic change, it's about reclaiming stability in a system that's been under quiet strain for years. A small daily serving is enough, a handful, not a dessert-sized portion, just enough to give the body the compounds it no longer produces as efficiently on its own. And here's the deeper truth. Even with improved hormone balance and circulation, the prostate still faces one of its greatest enemies, microscopic oxidative damage that accumulates over time. There is one specific mineral that acts as a frontline defense against that process, and the nut that delivers it is far more powerful than most men realize. 4. Brazil nuts. Here is something that stops many men cold when they truly understand it. A mineral deficiency you feel nothing from can quietly determine the future of your prostate. No pain, no warning, no early symptoms. Just silent cellular damage accumulating year after year until the prostate begins to swell, harden, and resist calming down. That mineral is selenium. Selenium is not optional for prostate health. It is a core component of the body's antioxidant defense system. Without enough of it, prostate cells lose their ability to protect themselves from inflammatory damage. And once that protective shield weakens, enlargement becomes far more likely. Not suddenly, but steadily. Brazil nuts are unique because they deliver selenium in a form your body recognizes immediately. In fact, they are the single richest natural source of this mineral on Earth. One Brazil nut alone can supply what your body needs for an entire day. And that concentration is exactly what makes them both powerful and demanding of respect. For men over 60, selenium matters more than ever. As we age, our natural antioxidant systems decline. The enzymes responsible for neutralizing oxidative stress become less efficient. This means prostate cells are left exposed, more vulnerable to inflammation, more reactive to hormonal shifts, and slower to recover once damaged. When selenium levels are adequate, something important happens beneath the surface. The prostate's internal environment becomes more stable, cellular damage slows, inflammatory signaling begins to quiet, not because the body is forced to change, but because it finally has the resources to defend itself again. I've spoken with men who did everything right. They exercised, ate reasonably well, and followed medical advice, yet still struggled with worsening urinary symptoms. When we looked deeper, selenium deficiency was often part of the picture, not dramatic, just enough to matter. There is something deeply grounding about correcting a deficiency like this. Men often describe it not as feeling better immediately, but feeling less fragile, less on edge, less reactive. Their symptoms don't dominate every thought. Nights feel calmer. There's less fear that things are spiraling out of control. But here is where I need to be very clear and very honest. With Brazil nuts, more is not better. This is not a food you eat by the handful. This is measured nutrition. 1 nut per day is enough for most men, 2 at the absolute maximum. Selenium is powerful precisely because it acts at the cellular level. Excess does not enhance the benefit. It overrides balance. Used correctly, Brazil nuts serve as a targeted nutritional tool. They strengthen immune regulation. They protect prostate cells from oxidative injury, and they support long-term cellular integrity in a way few foods can. Yet even selenium, with all its protective strength, is not the final piece of the puzzle. There is one nut that works more broadly than all the others, one that addresses inflammation, circulation, cellular aging, and even sleep all at once. It is the nut I recommend most often to men who want lasting relief, not temporary control. And that brings us to the most important one of all. 5. Walnuts, the most important. Here is a moment of honesty that many men find unsettling, even shocking, when they finally hear it. The prostate does not enlarge overnight, and it is not broken. It is exhausted. Exhausted from years of low-grade inflammation, oxidative wear, and metabolic stress that the body has been trying to manage quietly on its own. When that internal load becomes too much, the prostate swells as a reaction, not a flaw. This is why walnuts matter more than most men realize. Walnuts are not simply nutritious. They are uniquely equipped to address the deepest drivers behind prostate enlargement, the kind that medications often manage only on the surface. They contain the highest total antioxidant capacity of all commonly consumed nuts, along with a rare concentration of plant-based omega-3 fatty acids known as ALA. Omega-3s change the internal environment of the body. They help interrupt chronic inflammatory signaling that keeps prostate tissue irritated and tense. This is not a temporary effect. It is foundational. When inflammation decreases, pressure eases. When pressure eases, urinary flow often improves naturally. But walnuts do something even more remarkable, something that speaks directly to aging men. The polyphenols found in walnuts are transformed in the gut by beneficial bacteria into compounds called urolithins. These compounds have been shown to support cellular resilience, particularly in tissues that are prone to age-related inflammation, including the prostate. In simple terms, walnuts don't just soothe the prostate, they help it age more slowly. For men over 60, this distinction is critical. Aging is inevitable. Accelerated deterioration is not. Many of my patients describe walnut consumption not as a sudden improvement, but as a gradual return to balance. Fewer nighttime interruptions, less urgency, a calmer bladder, sleep that begins to feel restorative rather than fractured. And along with better sleep comes better energy, clearer thinking, and a renewed sense of control. There is also an emotional weight lifted when these changes occur. Men tell me they stop measuring their nights by bathroom visits. They stop fearing long drives or trips. They stop feeling betrayed by their own bodies. That emotional relief matters just as much as the physical benefits. Walnuts also support cardiovascular health, which is inseparable from prostate health. Blood vessels that function well deliver nutrients efficiently and reduce congestion in pelvic tissues. And unlike many interventions, walnuts work gently, without forcing the body into extreme changes. There's even a small but meaningful amount of melatonin naturally present in walnuts. For men struggling with disrupted sleep due to nocturnal urination, this adds another layer of support. Not sedation, just alignment, helping the body remember when to rest and when to remain calm. The practical guidance is simple. About 1 ounce per day. Roughly 7 walnut halves, raw or lightly toasted. Consistency matters far more than quantity. This is not about treatment. This is about daily nourishment that gives your body the tools it needs to protect itself. Walnuts are the nut I return to again and again because they address inflammation at its root. They speak the body's language, and they support more than just the prostate. They support aging with dignity. But even the most powerful food loses its impact if it's used at the wrong time, in the wrong way, or alongside habits that quietly undo its benefits. And that brings us to a critical next step, understanding when and how these foods should actually be used for the best possible results. 6. How and when you eat these nuts matters. This is the part that quietly shocks many men, not because it's dramatic, but because of how often it's overlooked. You can eat the right nut in the right amount every single day and still sabotage the benefits without realizing it, not through what you eat, but through when and how you eat it. As men move past 60, digestion, hormone signaling, and bladder sensitivity change. The body no longer responds the way it did decades ago. Timing begins to matter, rhythm begins to matter, and the prostate, sitting at the center of this system, is deeply affected by those daily rhythms. I've had men tell me, "Doctor, I'm doing everything right, but my nights are still miserable." When we slow the conversation down, the pattern often becomes clear. They're eating healthy foods late at night. They're snacking out of habit, not hunger. They're giving their bladder stimulation at exactly the wrong moment. Nuts, especially those rich in healthy fats like walnuts, are best eaten earlier in the day. When consumed in the morning or early afternoon, they support stable blood sugar, balanced insulin response, and calmer inflammatory signaling. The body has time to process the fats, absorb the nutrients, and use them where they're needed, without increasing nocturnal bladder activity. When these same foods are eaten late in the evening, the outcome can be very different. Digestion slows at night. Fluid dynamics shift. The bladder becomes more sensitive. For some men, this is the difference between sleeping 3 uninterrupted hours or waking up yet again, frustrated and exhausted. How you eat also matters. As we age, rushed eating places additional strain on digestion. Poorly chewed food is harder to process, leading to abdominal pressure and subtle irritation that can worsen urinary urgency. Slowing down, chewing thoroughly, allows the gut to absorb nutrients efficiently and reduces unnecessary stress on the pelvic region. This isn't about rigid rules. It's about respecting a body that now asks for gentler handling than it once did. There is also a powerful psychological element here. Many men eat late at night out of routine or emotional habit, not hunger. That unconscious pattern often coincides with disrupted sleep, late hydration, and increased nighttime urination. Breaking that cycle doesn't just help the prostate, it restores a sense of control over the evening, over the night, over rest itself. When men adjust timing, earlier meals, earlier nut intake, fewer late-night snacks, something subtle but meaningful shifts. Nights become quieter. The bladder feels less reactive, sleep extends, and mornings begin with less resentment toward the body. I often remind my patients that nutrition is not only about what you put into your body, it's about when your body is ready to receive it. Food can be supportive or disruptive depending on timing. For the aging prostate, this distinction is critical. Used thoughtfully, these nuts work with your natural rhythms instead of against them. And when the body senses that cooperation, inflammation softens rather than resists. But even perfect timing cannot rescue a system that is being actively undermined by a single common habit, one so ingrained in modern life that most men don't even recognize it as harmful. And that habit is what we need to talk about next. 7. The one common mistake that cancels prostate progress. Here is something that deeply surprises, and often frustrates, many men when they learn it. You can do almost everything right for your prostate, and still feel like you're moving backward. Not because the approach doesn't work, but because one everyday habit is quietly undoing the progress behind the scenes. That habit is excess sodium and ultra-processed foods. This is not about occasional indulgence. It's about patterns so normalized that most men don't even recognize them as harmful anymore. Canned foods, packaged snacks, frozen meals, restaurant dinners heavy in salt. These foods do far more than raise blood pressure. They directly influence fluid retention, bladder sensitivity, and pelvic congestion. 3 factors that aggravate prostate symptoms relentlessly. When sodium intake is high, the body holds onto fluid. That fluid doesn't distribute evenly, it pools, And in aging men, it often increases pressure in the pelvis and around the bladder. The prostate, already enlarged and sensitive, reacts by tightening its grip around the urethra. The result is urgency, weak flow, and frequent nighttime urination that feels uncontrollable. I've had men tell me, "Doctor, I eat walnuts every day. I've changed my diet. Still, I wake up 4 times a night." And when we examine the full picture, the issue is almost always hiding in plain sight. The evening meal. Salty dinners consumed late in the day create a perfect storm. Fluid shifts toward the bladder when the body is trying to rest. Hormones that regulate urination are disrupted. The prostate sits in the middle of this chaos, reacting defensively. There is an emotional weight to this realization. Men often feel discouraged, thinking they've failed, but the truth is much simpler and much kinder. The body is responding logically to conflicting signals. You cannot ask it to calm inflammation while simultaneously flooding it with irritants. Ultra-processed foods also increase systemic inflammation. They contain additives and refined carbohydrates that inflame the gut, triggering inflammatory signals that ripple throughout the body, including the prostate. Even the most powerful anti-inflammatory foods cannot fully counteract this if the source of irritation remains constant. When men reduce sodium intake, especially in the evening, something shifts. The bladder becomes less reactive. Nighttime urgency decreases, sleep stretches longer, and all the supportive habits finally get the chance to work together instead of fighting each other. This isn't about perfection or restriction, it's about clarity, about understanding that prostate health is not built on isolated choices, but on alignment. One supportive habit cannot thrive in an environment of contradiction. I often remind my patients that the prostate is not stubborn, it is responsive, but it responds to the loudest signals it receives. And for many men, sodium and processed foods have been shouting over everything else. When that noise quiets down, even slightly, the body begins to listen again. The inflammation softens, the pressure eases, and progress, once stalled, becomes possible. But there is still one final question that must be answered. Who is this approach truly for, and when is caution necessary? Not every man's situation is the same, and understanding that distinction is essential before moving forward. 8. Who this approach is for, and when caution matters. Here is the moment many men don't expect, the moment when hope must be balanced with honesty. Not every health message you hear should apply blindly to everyone, and ignoring that truth can be just as dangerous as doing nothing at all. What works beautifully for one man can be inappropriate for another if context is ignored. This approach is designed primarily for men who are living in the gray zone, not crisis, not emergency, but frustration. Men over 60 who notice gradual changes, slower flow, interrupted sleep, a prostate that feels increasingly present in daily life. If that describes you, these nutritional tools are meant to support your body before more aggressive interventions become necessary. This approach works best when prostate enlargement is mild to moderate, when symptoms are irritating, not debilitating, when the goal is to slow progression, calm inflammation, and regain control, not to replace medical care, but to complement it wisely. However, this is also where responsibility matters. If you are dealing with advanced prostate cancer, undergoing active oncologic treatment, or experiencing rapid symptom progression, nutrition alone is not enough. In those situations, delaying medical care in favor of dietary strategies can cause harm. Food supports biology. It does not override serious pathology. There are also individual considerations. Brazil nuts contain selenium in very high doses. Certain medications affect mineral balance. Conditions involving kidney function or thyroid regulation require extra care. This is why personalization matters. The body is not a machine. And aging bodies deserve respect, not experimentation. But here is the emotional truth I want to speak directly to. Many men hesitate to take action because they fear being told nothing can be done. Others fear hearing, it's too late. That fear keeps them frozen, silent, waiting. And during that waiting, Inflammation continues, sleep deteriorates, and confidence slowly erodes. This approach is not about false promises, it is about empowerment, about giving men tools that restore participation in their own health, simple habits that reintroduce a sense of agency, a feeling that you are no longer standing on the sidelines watching your body decline. I have seen men regain calmness not because every symptom vanished, but because they finally understood what was happening inside their bodies. Understanding brings relief, and relief reduces stress. Another powerful driver of inflammation. This is also why I emphasize conversation with your physician, not confrontation, cooperation. Bring these strategies into the discussion. Let medical care and nutrition support each other instead of competing. If you are an older man watching this, listening quietly, wondering if any of this still matters, let me tell you something plainly. It does. Aging does not mean surrender. It means adjustment. It means choosing wisdom over fear. You are not chasing youth, you are building stability. And now, before we conclude, there is one final piece I want to share. Not about nuts, not about food, but about the mindset shift that determines whether any of this truly changes your life. That is where real transformation begins. Final thoughts. Gentlemen, if there is one message I want you to carry with you after watching this, it is this. Your prostate is not your enemy. It is responding to years of signals it has been receiving quietly, patiently, and without complaint. When enlargement happens, it is not a sudden failure. It is a request for support that went unanswered for too long. For many men over 60, prostate symptoms feel like a verdict, a sign that decline is inevitable, that sleep will always be broken, that energy will always be rationed, that quality of life must shrink along with the space between bathroom visits. But that belief is not rooted in biology. It is rooted in misinformation and silence. What we have talked about today is not a miracle cure, and it is not a replacement for medical care. It is something far more realistic and far more powerful. Alignment. Aligning nutrition with how the male body actually ages. Aligning daily habits with inflammation control. Aligning your choices with the biology that determines how comfortably you live the coming years. One nut may sound insignificant, almost laughably small, but small, consistent inputs shape long-term outcomes. Every day, your body is either being pushed toward irritation or guided toward balance. The foods you eat, the timing of those foods, the habits you keep in the evening, and the signals you remove all play a role in how your prostate behaves tomorrow night, next month, and 5 years from now. I have watched men transform not because their prostate magically returned to adolescence, but because their relationship with their own health changed. They began sleeping longer, they worried less, they stopped feeling betrayed by their bodies. And when that happens, the nervous system calms. Stress hormones fall. Inflammation softens. Healing becomes possible. There is dignity in taking responsibility for your health without panic. There is strength in choosing informed action over fear. And there is wisdom in understanding that aging well is not about fighting time, but about reducing unnecessary damage along the way. If you are watching this and thinking, "Why didn't anyone tell me this sooner?" You are not alone, and it is not your fault. Men's health conversations often begin too late and end too quickly. This channel exists to slow that conversation down and make it useful again. If this information resonated with you, stay with me, subscribe, and turn on notifications so we can continue these discussions calmly, honestly, and with respect for where you are in life. Share your thoughts in the comments. Many men are reading quietly, looking for reassurance that they are not alone. Your voice may help someone more than you realize. And remember this as you move forward. Improvement does not demand perfection. It demands consistency. One mindful choice today is better than 10 drastic plans you never follow through on. You are not running out of options. You are stepping into understanding. And that is where real health begins. Gentlemen, before you go, I want to ask you for something simple but meaningful. If this video helped you understand your prostate health a little better, please take a moment to press the like button. It tells the platform that this information matters, and it helps this message reach other men who may be struggling quietly, just like you once were. If you know a friend, a brother, a father, or a fellow veteran who wakes up every night exhausted and frustrated, share this video with him. Many men suffer in silence because these conversations rarely happen openly. One share can make a real difference in someone's life. I also invite you to leave a comment below. You don't need to write anything complicated. You can simply write where you are watching from or what symptom resonated most with you. When men speak up, others realize they are not alone, and that sense of connection is powerful. And finally, if you find value in calm, honest health education made specifically for men over 60, consider supporting this channel through a small donation. Your support helps keep this information accessible, independent, and focused on education, not fear or hype. Thank you for being here, for taking your health seriously, and for supporting a community built on understanding and dignity.